My guest today is Femi Okutubo, founder and publisher of Trumpet newspaper, Britain's largest distributed black newspaper. Femi is also the founder of the Gathering of Africa's Best, an award ceremony in the UK which celebrates the achievements of Africans in the diaspora.
As you introduced me, I am the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Trumpet newspaper, which is a newspaper targeting the African community here in the UK. Now, when we started out then in 1995, which was about 15 years ago, there was a reason why we actually started. We were in a situation where there was a lot of negative publicity about Africans living in the UK. Hardly would any week go by without there being a negative story by the British mainstream media describing us as fraudsters, benefit cheats, and all whatnot. But then the reality is that every country has its own bad eggs, and it was unfair to sort of generalize about Africans just based on the few misdeeds of a very, very minute few. So we felt that the only way we could change that was to blow our own trumpet, and that was how the Trumpet started, to sort of blow the good news about the positiveness which the African community is characterized with. Over the years, it's been a journey. But one thing we can confidently say is that 15 years down the line, Africans are now treated with a lot more respect. We are taken a lot more seriously, and people are beginning to hear a lot more about the positiveness that the African community has to present. And Africans are indeed ruling.
Did you face obstacles that were particular to you as an African?
There would have probably been a few obstacles, even though most of the time I tend not to want to sort of, pay much attention to them. But again, in the first instance, the reason why we started was an obstacle, in the sense that, you were already stereotyped, you were already placed into a box as to, what you were and what you represented. And that obviously reflected even in terms of the business community as well. Because, for example, you wanted to open a bank account, the mere fact that you're seen as an African, again had its own disadvantages. So you actually had to prove yourself, you had to walk the extra mile in proving yourself, or proving to the world that, no, indeed, you're not what they have at the back of their mind. Again, even as far as your suppliers are concerned, things which which other people would have probably ordinarily got or easily got, you probably had to work a little bit extra to sort of make sure you got it. But as far as I'm concerned, because of the determination we had, because we were out on a mission, I don't think those obstacles were really too much of a challenge. Now, in the first instance, like I said, there were challenges in terms of image, where we're seen as fraudsters and all whatnot. Now, through stories that we've run in the Trumpet, and also through the Gathering of Africa's Best Awards, which we also instituted, we've been able to prove to the world that there are people who are achieving. So, for example, if you look at the British National Health Service, whether it's in terms of doctors, whether it's in terms of nurses and various other medical personnel, you have a sizable number of Africans in there, such that if you were to actually take them out of the system, the government would feel it. Look at Stratford bus station, for example, which was designed maybe some 14, 15 years ago. At that time, that was an architectural masterpiece. That was designed by an African. Look in various fields of human endeavor, Africans are achieving. So we would say that we've been able to sort of bring a lot more of those to the fore. Again, at the time we started, we didn't have much in terms of a legal radio station or in terms of even a television station. Now more entrants have come into the industry in terms of electronic media, print media, online media. And to God all glory be, we believe that the mere fact that we were there in terms of trying to encourage others to also come on board, I think has been a great achievement. And thank God, as far as the print media is concerned, in fact, not just print media, the Trumpet is actually the longest surviving media within the African community today.
Are there opportunities for people of African descent based in the UK to strengthen the position of Africa?
There are definitely opportunities, because here you find out that things are probably a lot more easier, or there's a lot more sanity sometimes in terms of getting things done. If I was going to look at a place like Nigeria, for example, sometimes it's because of our culture, because of sycophants around government officials sometimes, it's sometimes a bit difficult to actually get hold of government officials and so on. And that sort of transcends the whole fabric of the society. But then here, it's not uncommon for you to write a letter, for example, to the Prime Minister or to the mayor or so on, and you will get some form of response. In some other parts of Africa, that would not be the case. So even from that very, simple example, I think there's a difference in terms of the opportunities that exist. I've had situations where, for example, I've gone to Africa, especially Nigeria, where I've tried to see government officials, I've tried to see people in government, and not even just in government, even in the private sector. Unfortunately, it's not so, it's not so easy to get hold of them for whatever reasons. Now, these are people that, for example, when they come down to the UK, you probably find that, it's so easy to get hold of them. In fact, there might be people, maybe you grew up with together, maybe you even used to live together here in the UK or somewhere. But, down there, it's a totally different kettle of fish. And when you put all that into perspective, you'd find out that at least there are more opportunities here. No, let me put that in proper perspective. There are opportunities here in terms of at least being able to sort of penetrate and break down barriers. But again, I also feel that there are a lot more vast opportunities in Africa itself. If you look at what's happening in the world today, in terms of the economic climate and so on, you'd see that obviously the Western world is facing a recession. Africa is an emerging market. There are actually a lot more opportunities in those respects. So depending on which angle you're coming from, you find out that there are opportunities here, just as there are opportunities back in Africa.
How do you think the Africans in the UK can actually, work to support the African continent to help it to develop?
The role of the diaspora, no doubt, is a very important one, and it's something that many of the governments in Africa have begun to tap into. If you look at the case of India, the role that the Indian diaspora played in developing India, is massive, and I think that has been an inspiration to a few of the African countries in terms of making sure that they're tapping, using their diaspora a lot more effectively. A place like Nigeria, for example, what Nigeria has done is there's an organization called the Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, which was actually set up by the government, although it's run by, its membership is obviously of Nigerians in the diaspora, but government is now using that as a tool to sort of reach out to its, citizens abroad. And it's not just lip service. The good thing now is that even now, if you look at Nigeria today, you actually have some members of NIDO, or the Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, who, for example, are now in government, who are ministers and all whatnot. The current finance minister, for example, Mr. Aganga is someone who actually was here in the diaspora. So, and there are examples of that happening even in other parts of Africa as well. And that's one area that the government sort of needs to sort of tap into. The reality is we have a lot of, talent who are working in other parts of the world. And it's very important that government actually tries to sort of use them, and we need to sort of reverse this brain drain which we have in the African continent and turn that into a brain gain.
How do Africans succeed and stay relevant in this fast-moving information-based economy?
Well, we must keep in touch or keep up to date with whatever is happening. We must make sure that we're moving with technology as well, and that we're, major players as far as that is concerned. And a lot of that also needs to go back, reflected in Africa itself. We need to sort of make sure that technology is, well harnessed in terms of what we do back in Africa. And we're beginning to see signs of that. Look at the way the telecommunication industry has blossomed in Africa over the last decade or so. So, and that is just one area. Even the internet now, you find out that at least it's developing. Even in parts of Africa now, they're already talking in terms of fiber fiber optics, in terms of the technology for internet and so on. So things are really moving, and I think we just need to see a lot more work done in that area.
There's a lot of talk about immigration in the media at the moment. How do you think this debate affects Africans?
Well, you find out that there are, as far as the African community is concerned, yes, you've got Africans who, for example, were born in Britain and therefore, are not directly affected by immigration. But you also have a number of others who, for example, have come into UK under one immigration regulation or the other, who are definitely affected by immigration. Now, I think the reality is it's quite unfortunate that sometimes immigration has been taken out of context, because what should really be happening is that, it's like an accounting balance sheet. You have assets and liabilities. As people are moving out, you also have people who are coming in. You have, for example, in UK, you have Britons who are actually living in other parts of the world, just as you have people from other parts of the world coming in. The reality is, if you look at most of the Africans, even the African immigrants, for example, that people are referring to, these are, you find out that they're actually contributing to the economy. And that's why one would subscribe to the kind of views by the mayor, for example, who are saying that rather than shut out African immigrants from the system, let's try and legalize them, because they recognize that they are contributing. These people are doing some of the jobs which citizens would not normally want to do. They're earning the money because they're working illegally, but unfortunately the government is losing out because they're not able to collect the taxes that they should. And, so if things are properly done, if things are legalized, if many of these people, are, regularized, you find out that the country is going to be better off for it.
How better can Africans contribute to the development of the UK?
Well, we've already started doing that. So I gave the example earlier on in terms of the National Health Service. Look at London Underground as well. You find Africans, not just in terms of maybe being train drivers or maybe being in terms of station operators. No, even in terms of senior management, you find out that Africans are already making a mark there. And, this is something that is happening in various areas of human endeavor in terms of the role that Africans are playing. Look at the local authorities, for example. So you find out that there is a lot of talent in various fields which needs to be developed further, and which even the British government needs to tap into in terms of the vast resources that the African community has.
And what is your favorite thing about living and working in the UK?
To an extent, I would say, a bit of maybe security of life. But again, I think it's also a case of playing a role as far as the African community in the UK itself is concerned. The mere fact that one is seen as a community leader, the mere fact that one is able to influence thoughts, views and so on, the mere fact that one is able to represent the views of the community to the wider audience through the medium that one has, I think is a source of joy. But I think, again, I've always seen myself as an African to the core. I believe that Africa needs to remain united. I believe that Africans in diaspora need to be connected to the Africans on the continent. And therefore, if I have my ways, I would rather now move back to the African continent itself, not necessarily Nigeria from where I hail from, but, to Africa, to go and, take things to yet another level.
And finally, what would be your advice to other aspiring Africans in the UK?
I would say that, when you have a vision, make sure you pursue it. Don't believe that anything is impossible. If you say something is impossible, then it will be impossible. But if you believe that it is possible, there may be challenges, but definitely you will get there. Be the best at what you do. Continue to contribute to the positive image of the community. And at the end of it all, one would have cause to thank God.
Thank you very much for being on the show with us.
Thank you very much.